Hey there, internets. So no video last week due to some technical errors, so the Duggar response video got delayed. But in the news this week is also the charges against Mr. Hunter Biden. You know, they were supposed to have I was reading at least part of a very small part of the 212 pages of the transcript from the a whistleblower's testimony, the named whistleblower, which is Gary Sheffley. And of course, the first several pages are all these disclosures about this is what's supposed to happen. You know, if you know that you're doing this and that we can request these and you can't lie to Congress and all that. But several things that aren't being talked about in the wider media. I'm going to link. First link will be just to the page where I'm going to take most of my commentary off, which is from the Ways and Means Committee. And essentially, what you have is that the idea of Shafley said you're not supposed to have we don't in America. The idea is we're not supposed to have two tiers of justice, one for people way up and one for everybody else, and that's literally kind of what's going on here. So essentially, it says testimony of IRS employees reveals Biden IRS DOJ interfered with tax investigation of Hunter Biden, revealing preferred treatment for wealthy and politically connected. Now, of course, Hunter Biden is now charged and pleading guilty to two charges of failure to pay on part of his income and possessing a gun by a drug user, which is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. He is not charged with lying on Form 4473. Now, when I did some Google searching, because I heard some things saying it's something that's commonly prosecuted, something that's not, I found a General Accounting Office page from 2017 that said out of almost 120,000 per year of denials, about 12,500 are referred for investigation by the ATF, and 12 are prosecuted. That's 2017. 2018, according to the Washington Post, and I have that article as well, and I will link to this because this is all kind of all together. In fiscal year, I think it has 2020 in this article. It is the Washington Post, granted, but he is not charged with lying on that. That's a different charge. Lying on Form 4473 is a form for those of you that are not gun owners. If you've never bought a gun, if you go to a gun show, gun shop, or other firearms dealer and you buy a gun, you fill out Form 4473 unless it's an NFA item, and that's what's used during your purchase. This is some of the stuff that Joe Biden pushed through very proudly when he was pushing background checks and gun control in Congress. And so, Form 4473 is the key part of that. It was, I believe, already in existence. But you're not allowed to be a drug user, but you have to state that you are not an addict or a felon. Lying on that form is punishable by up to 10 years in prison. For being an unlawful user of unlawful drugs in possession of a firearm is up to 5 years. So you become an addict after you already have the gun, it's 5 years. If you lie about it to buy a gun, it's up to 10. I heard somebody claim it was 15, but I'm going to go with 10 here. In fiscal 2018, they had, in fiscal 2018, it was 444 referrals to prosecutors and 271 that were actually charged, and in fiscal 2020, 433 referrals, 243 cases. In 2019, it was 478 referrals and 298 actual cases charged. None of that says how many were convicted. Point being is, it's not as widely as it may happen. It is not nearly charged a lot, but in a grand scheme of a 330 million population, it is a fairly serious crime. And old Mr. Biden there is pushing gun control hard. So why is his son not being charged? This is the kind of thing of what's good enough for me is not good enough for you, or it's too good for you. So he's getting off easy on that as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely. He should be charged with lying on the form. His own book says he was on crack cocaine when he bought the gun, which means he checked that box saying, I'm not an unlawful user of illegal drugs. That is lying on Form 4473, not just being a felon in possession of a firearm, which are two different charges. This whole thing started on the other side of it, the tax side of it. They were investigating some sort of a international amateur porn site, which of course Joe on the laptop, and this is apparently how the FBI knew about the laptop in the first place, was because the IRS, starting in 2018, had started investigating Hunter Biden as some offshoot of this investigation. Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf was one of the people dragging the feet because and saying, well, what's the optics of getting a search warrant for Joe Biden's place in times like 2019 and early 2020, not even when it's like 6 weeks before an election, which they actually have a rule 90 days before an election. They don't do search warrants that could be politically sensitive, and they don't, in 60 days they don't file charges. They have rules of that way they don't get accused of interfering in an election. So months before that, they were already starting to drag their feet. So that's part of what's going on there. Among some of the more serious charges are where you get back into 2014 and 2015. They chose not to they could have charged with filing some false returns. We'll find that in the Daily Mail article here again. They had the opportunity. They actually had a chance to charge him with. Let's see, where was it? I saw it here. There's multiple years where they could have gotten him for failure to pay in a timely manner. And then there's other years where they could have nailed him for filing a false return. Okay, here it is. According to Shapley, Wolf supported charging Hunter Biden for tax evasion and filing a false return in let's see, backing up on here on the Daily Mail article. Shapley wanted to question Hunter Biden, associate Rob Walker, about information from the infamous laptop, including email that said 10 held by H for the big guy. But said the assistant U.S. attorney in Delaware said there was no specific criminality in the line of questioning. Shapley memorialized his complaints to higher ups. This investigation's been hampered and slowed by claims of potential election meddling, he complained in a May 3rd, 2021 memo. Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf does not want to include DOJ's Public Integrity Unit because that they would take authority away from her, Shapley claimed, who added, "We do not agree with her obstruction on this matter." According to Shapley, Wolf supported charging Hunter Biden for tax evasion and false return in 2014, 2018, 2020, 2019, and failure to file or pay for 2015, 16, or 2017. It's my understanding the tax division had then authored a 90-page plus memo that recommended prosecution. And by slow walking some of this, it went past the statute of limitations, so then they can just say, we can't charge him anyway. How convenient. The process meant no charges could ever be brought in the District of Columbia, where the statute of limitations is on the 2014-15 charges would eventually expire, Shapley said. So they literally dragged their feet to not have to protect Hunter Biden and, by extension, Joe Biden. Because you start asking who's the big guy, well, they're trying to say, well, we were hoping that he might want to get involved after he wasn't vice president anymore. And I'm arguing with my laptop. Point is, some of these people that were, one was, the guy filing charges is a Trump holdover, but there are people in there that did not want to file against somebody who's obviously corrupt. That is not acceptable. This needs to be investigated more deeply. It needs to be put to a stop. This is the thing nobody should like. But he's, and you know, granted, things do get plea bargained down. But how many of us would get to plea bargain down filing a false tax return, a couple, 3 charges of that, plus failure to pay for three more years, and a serious gun charge, down to a lesser gun felony and not go to jail, and not get nailed by the IRS to the wall, and not go to jail? How many of us would really get that? Probably none of us. And granted, he has probably better attorneys. But some of this stuff they have dead to rights. They've got his laptops. They've got all sorts of other stuff. See if it'll actually let me move to that window now. Maybe not. My laptop's dying. But, there it goes. On the Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith, Missouri District 8, released the following statement. Today, the Ways and Means Committee voted to make public the testimony of IRS employees blowing the whistle on misconduct at the IRS and Biden Department of Justice regarding unequal enforcement of tax law, interference in government abuse, and the handling of investigations into criminal activity by President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and retaliation against IRS employees blowing the whistle on abuse. Understand, they took a group of investigators that had been working this case for 5 years off of it when they started getting ready to try and charge. The American people deserve to know that when it comes to criminal enforcement, they are not on the same playing field as the wealthy and politically connected class. The preferential treatment of Hunter Biden received would never have been granted to ordinary Americans. And they are only talking about the IRS. The same guy who wants to hire 87,000 more IRS agents, his son's protected from. Whistleblowers describe how the Biden Justice Department intervened and overstepped a campaign to protect the son of Joe Biden by delaying, denying an ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden's alleged crimes. The testimony shows tactics used by the Justice Department to delay investigation long enough to reach the statute of limitations, evidenced by the divulged sensitive actions by the investigative team to Biden's attorneys, denied requests by the U.S. Attorney to bring charges against Biden. IRS employees who blew the whistle on this abuse were retaliated against, despite a commitment IRS Commissioner Werfel made before the Ways and Means Committee to uphold their legal protections. They were removed from this investigation after they responsibly worked through the chain of command to raise their concerns. And at the bottom of this, in the PDFs you can link to, includes the email chain going back and forth on some of this, saying, hey, I've tried to use the chain of command, and then borderline threatening him to shut up. The committee has acted in good faith with participation from both Democrats and Republicans, as the issues raised today ought to be a bipartisan concern. Hopefully we can find a path forward to continue to go where the facts lead us. If the federal government is not treating all taxpayers equally, or if it is changing the rules to engineer a preferred outcome, Congress has a duty to ask why and hold agencies accountable and consider appropriate legislative action. The scales of justice must not be skewed to favor the wealthy and the politically connected. And this is why I'm not going to sit there and defend Trump either. Because, hey, if he did something, you need to be held accountable. Hunter Biden is not being held accountable. And if it connects to Joe Biden, he's not either. But there is an affidavit, which you can read here, a transcript, redacted supplemental submission. I read some of those, and they basically have... I managed to get through a chunk of whistleblower number 1, which is Gary Shafley. I hate to mispronounce the guy's name. And it says a June 7th, 2023 letter, but it's actually includes a bunch of emails going back to 2020. Long story short, there's corruption being uncovered, and Hunter Biden's right at the center of it. We have it on video at a Council on Foreign Relations thing of Joe Biden talking about how when he was vice president, telling the Ukrainian leader at the time, fire that prosecutor or you're not getting U.S. aid. And Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of that of Burisma, which is a Ukrainian gas company. And you're telling me that that's not corrupt? After the PDF says, what the committee has learned, the federal government is not treating all taxpayers the same, providing preferential treatment to the wealthy and well-connected, including the son of the President of the United States. Despite the fact that IRS officials recommended that Hunter Biden be charged with criminal activity that includes attempts to evade or defeat taxes, fraud, and false statements, and willful failures to file returns, supply information, or pay taxes for over $3 million of income, Mr. Biden received preferential treatment in the course of the investigation and has struck a plea deal that will keep him out from behind bars. Meanwhile, in 2014, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida announced that a man was sentenced to 13 months of prison to be followed by a year of supervised release for failing to file an income tax return, the same misdemeanor tax offense that Hunter Biden was charged with. Honestly, I think Hunter Biden is charged with a misdemeanor failure to pay. The false returns that he could have been charged with would have been felonies. He should have been charged with them. The Department of Justice interfered with the investigation to Hunter Biden's clear tax issues with a delay, divulge, deny campaign that ultimately shielded him by allowing statute of limitations to pass on his tax crimes. Recurring unjustifiable delays pervaded the investigation, including authenticating the message between Hunter Biden and Chinese officials. Investigators were told that the U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf that there is no way a search warrant for evidence would get approved because the evidence of interest would be found in the guest house of former Vice President Biden. Why should that even matter? Divulge. And by matter, why should it matter that you're going to raid the home of a former vice president whose son is being investigated? But even if it was not his son and it was Biden, why should that not be investigated? Not cool. Whoever would refuse to investigate it if there's a probable cause shouldn't be in office anywhere. Divulge. Investigators found out that attorneys for Hunter Biden were tipped off about actions relating to the investigation in advance. For example, even as investigators had probable cause to search a Northern Virginia storage unit in which Hunter Biden had stored files, attorneys for Biden were tipped off. They were also told they had to wait for the storage unit to sit there for a month, undisturbed. So as long as they kept visiting the storage unit, you really couldn't search it, apparently. Deny. U.S. Attorney of Delaware David Weiss tried to bring charges in District of Columbia around March 2022, but was denied. Weiss sought special counsel status from the DOJ in the spring of 2022 and was denied. Weiss sought to bring charges in the Central District of California in the fall of 2022, and that request was denied in January of 2023. IRS employees work through a chain of command to blow the whistle on this misconduct, only to be met with hostility and retaliation, leading them to come to the Ways and Means Committee. Actions were taken to cut the IRS investigative team out of the process after they raised concern up their chain of command. One whistleblower was not selected for a position when he was more qualified than the candidate who was selected. I always wonder about those kind of accusations. Limits and pauses have been placed on other unrelated investigations that whistleblowers are working on, which hamper the investigators' ability to do their work or advance. The whistleblowers and their entire team were removed from the investigation on May 15, 2023, after blowing the whistle to Congress. So, is this corrupt? Sure looks like it to me. So, the fact that he's only pleading guilty to a couple of misdemeanors and staying out of jail, totally, absolutely a miscarriage of justice if he's guilty. When I was looking up stuff on 4473, I found the ATF district that covers Oklahoma talking about how they were prosecuting people for violating some of those laws and sending people to jail for 13 months and longer. Those kind of circumstances demand we enforce them. A lot of us on the pro-gun side have said, hey, before you pass new gun laws, enforce the ones you have. Well, why aren't they enforcing the same laws that they have pushed on Hunter Biden? Shouldn't he be prosecuted for lying on Form 4473? Sure looks like it to me. Not just guilty of possession of a firearm. That actually should be 2 charges, it seems to me. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that he should be nailed for lying on the form and being in possession of a firearm. They should have him for 2 charges on that. So that's what I got for you. I'm going to definitely include the Washington Post article, which you got to have a membership to, but you can get one for free to some extent. The Ways and Means Committee link, and I will include the Daily Mail link. I don't know what Hunter Biden was doing involved with a amateur porn site that got him, that created this side investigation. I'm not sure I want to know. Hopefully it's anything more than disgusting as opposed to something despicable. Because if it was anything like what a certain billionaire was into, that's even worse. Until then, knowing this little bit of bad news that he's not being treated like the rest of us would, y'all take care. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, subscribe if you haven't. A like and a comment fuels the algorithm. Until then, you all take care.